Filmmaker Magazine presents Back to One with Peter Rinaldi.
Lee Grant is an actor. She sat down with me at her home in Manhattan to talk about the work.
When you landed a role and you got the script, what was the first thing you did?
Each script I got opened up a different world to me. For instance, The Neon Ceiling was an extraordinary television show. It was like the first small movie that ever went on television. Gig Young was in it. There were things that I connected to very strongly in it. It was a woman married to a dentist who couldn't stand her, who couldn't stand anything about her. And she felt that she was on a line where she could tip over and fall into some place where she was a non-person. And this connected to me in my first marriage, in my marriage to a guy who was an intellectual, who was 12 years older than I was, and who had no respect for me at all, had no feeling for me, really. I was really just an au pair for him. I took care of his kids. And it was one of the reasons why I was so attracted to this, because a woman wrote it, and only a woman could know what that feeling was. But the thing about it was that it was a place where I was being given the opportunity to go to an area that I would never have been given that opportunity. And then the director, Frank Pearson, rewrote it. And this was the day we were supposed to leave for the desert to do it. And I opened it up to read it the night before, and here's this bitch. No wonder the dentist threw her out. And I sat in the living room at the Red House, and I said, find another girl. And he said, what? I said, you've destroyed this woman. Why? And he said, my first cousin was like this, and she, that's your life. That's your first cousin. If you go back to the script, I'll do it. But, you can just take this and leave it. And Frank is a great writer. He's written the most fabulous things, and I've worked with him since. But it was a revelation to me that he, as a writer-director, could absolutely turn this thing inside out. But once he understood it, it was his first directing job. He was, famous writer. We were able to work it out. Now, with this part, I hardly had to explore anything. All I had to do was just to walk into it and open it and use the Lyova of the first marriage, and I was there. I was home. On the other hand, with Shampoo, it was the opposite woman. Not that she had a husband who loved her, but Felicia, as against this little woman who just wanted to survive. Well, Felicia wanted to survive too. She too had a husband who had a mistress, was Julie Christie. And her fixation on her hair guy, on Warren, was so overwhelming that Lee, wanted to tear truck drivers off of their seats and go to bed with them. The whole sex drive was so alive in that atmosphere that it just took over for me and for the character.
Do you think that came from exploring what the character is, or was that in you?
It's immersion. No, it is immersion. And the way I do it, I don't know which way other actors use to have entry into that part of themselves. Because each character is a part of yourself. And then you make that part the whole. But what I do is to build a story. It's who am I? Where am I? And what do I want? And I literally write pages and pages and pages that give me the story of my life, so that all of the things that I think of and that I make up become my new nest, my frame of reference for a new person and a new life. So to build up that life, that backstory of my life, what's my objective? To find a life for myself. To find a life for myself. What's the obstacle? That I don't have any money except for what my husband has. There's no arrangement. I'm stuck in this fucking house. And what do I want? I want to be wanted. I want somebody to want me. I want to make myself beautiful so that somebody will want me. And then I write my story. I live here in this house. What happened was that I was selling shoes at some place, and I only got, a year of college. And this guy came along, Jack Warden came along, and he was fun. It was a thing. I got pregnant. I got knocked up. Whatever that was, that is my story, the story of my life. So that there isn't a hole, there isn't a place where I go to in this film where I don't have a background, a mother, a father, brothers, sisters that I haven't written about, so that I have a totally new life.
I want to read a short thing from your book and just get your further thoughts on this. This is an exchange between you and a director. He says, "How did you do that?" What? Carry over that feeling from Friday and bring that same feeling on Monday. And you said, well, it wasn't a big deal. I'd found something real for me, and I could leave it Friday and find it again when I come back into the situation. Yeah, but how? And you say, it's called acting. And I could read that and laugh at him, but part of me also is that man, because I don't fully know how you can do that, how actors do that. So this maybe leads into your training and effective memory. I mean, you studied with Sandy Meisner, but you also were invited to the Actors Studio. And which one did you pull from?
Sandy's. Lee Strasberg scared me. I thought he was brilliant, but very scary. I would not trust him to fool with me, and he never did. I mean, there was always that space between us. I loved going there. I loved listening. Don't forget that I was blacklisted when I went to the Actors Studio, so it was such a kind of pleasure for me to leave the house and go into the place where actors are, whether I, agreed with him or not. The actors there were superb. But to go and see these people work, it was like, my hidden love affair that I couldn't tell anybody at home, that my husband didn't know about. My hidden love affair. But no, Sandy Meisner, thank God, was a safe teacher. He gave me, I think it was the third time that I went, and I was 17. 17 when I went to the neighborhood playhouse. And he gave me an improv. He chose a boy in the class and he put me in front. And he said, you've been his girlfriend, but you don't want to be with him anymore. And you want him to leave. You want him to leave. This is your apartment. And I don't know what happened to me. But this feeling that I never, ever felt before, the more that he stayed, the more that I couldn't get him to go out the door, the more this rage just it rose up until I threw him out. And I don't know how long it took, but I did know that I was transported into another place, another part of myself that I never ever knew or was aware of, that was violent. The part of myself that I could use as a grown-up to sustain, to live, to get through whatever was in front of me. I could do it. I had that strength from someplace. And it was a revelation. And the way that he gave it to me was a way that entered me and that I could use where I was safe, where all of this exploration was happening in a safe place. Whereas with Lee, I felt that he wanted to be shocked. And that somewhere in the actor, they were looking for the ways to do something that he'd never seen before that would shock them. Like in his last 10 years there, he would have the girls sitting in their supposed bedrooms, but on stage, in their bra and panties, and go from there. Well, that's not something Sandy would ever do. Where do you go from there? How do you where do you, and then he'd say, darling, that was very interesting, but I think you can go farther. Where? There was no structure, although he was brilliant as an actor. I mean, that movie that he did with Al Pacino. I just have very mixed feelings. I do know that he's dangerous for me, that he controls. And there are some actors who like to be controlled. I know that Ellen Burstyn worships, literally worships. She has a shrine to Lee. She has a shrine to Lee. And I know that she talks to him, in the privacy of her shrine. And that he's given her everything. And she is a major actress. She takes her skin off to reveal what's there. I have the utmost respect for her as an actress. I was safe with Sandy. I was not safe with me.
Speaking of safety, what did you need from a director? Can you boil that down to something you can tell me, or give me examples of?
All of my directors, who were great directors, said, surprise me. My directors loved me. And as I said, when a director says, surprise me, Norman Jewison, Hal Ashby, just surprise me. That's the gift. That's the gift. Not to say, you do this, you do that, you do. Mike Nichols, when we did The Prisoner of Second Avenue, Peter Falk and I left this fabulous career I was having in Hollywood to come to do this 2-character play on Broadway, Neil Simon play, directed by Mike Nichols. Excuse me, but what a homecoming. And so we had a reading of the play, And there was a little silence afterwards. It was like Peter and I getting together for the first time. And Mike said, "Lee, Peter is the flower. You're the gardener." And the blood drained from my head. I had left all those movies I was being asked to do in Hollywood to be the gardener on Broadway, to be the gardener, and Peter was the flower and I wasn't. What a line. He's the flower, you're the gardener. Oh, it just made me crazy. But I knew immediately, how brilliant of him to put it in those terms. So that immediately I knew what my part was. I understood. He was the one having the nervous breakdown. There could be no two nervous breakdowns on stage at the same time. And I was the wife. I was the woman who took care of him. And once my feet were on that, once we both weren't having nervous breakdowns, then the role was clear. I knew that woman. I've been that woman. And everything settled into place. And Mike would put Peter and me on a cot backstage, lying next to each other, and have somebody with a script behind us, just to say, lie next to each other like you would, like a couple lying in bed in the dark, and just do our lines to each other so that they became our relationship. And it was just the most brilliant, yet sane thing to do. Put us in bed in the dark. That was the play where I forgot my lines. It was a Wednesday night. We had done the matinee, and so we'd gone through the play in the afternoon. And I only had Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and we were finished with the run. And it was the second act, and that's where he's not the breadwinner, I'm the breadwinner. And the second act opens with her bursting through the door, and she's carrying lunch things, and she's all dressed up like a career girl. She's coming from the office, and he's sitting there slumped in a chair in his pajamas. And she's chatting about what she did at the office, what I did at the office. And I start to put down tomatoes on the table between us. And I heard myself say, "Here are the tomatoes." And I thought it was funny that I was up, that I didn't know what happened next. It struck me funny because I've always had so much trust in the actor I'm working with that I knew that he would pick up and give me the line or give me the next line, because that's what had always happened. I'd gone up on stage before. I'd forgotten my lines, but somebody always jumped in and, went on to the next phase, whatever it was. And Peter just looked at me. And I said again, "Here are your tomatoes. Here are your tomatoes, tomatoes, tomatoes." And Peter turned to the audience and, put his thumb up to point to me. And all of a sudden, it was like the lights were on, the audience was there, the third shield was broken. I was just an actor on stage. He was an actor on stage. All the faces were looking and laughing with him and pointing at me. And my bottom line thrust was, he's named me. He's turned me in to the Un-American Activities Committee. He said, it's her fault. It's not me. It's her. I was naked. I was naked. I'd never been naked on stage before. I'd never been exposed. All of the things that we talk about, forgetting yourself within the frame of another world, of the play or the film or whatever it is, was ripped away, and I was exposed. I was Lee. I wasn't the character. I was Lee who had forgotten her lines. And they pulled the curtain, and the stage manager who, this was the end of a run. He was busy talking to somebody else. He wasn't there. When I looked at the lines, I couldn't. It was another dimension. Reading lines on a page was like the beginning. It's like, he's the flower, you're the gardener. You can't read those lines because they've been embodied in a whole new world, of the world that he and I made. So it was a different reality. The reality that we made on stage, that all actors make when they're on stage, has to be preserved. It can't be ripped apart and shown to the people who paid for tickets and who were sitting in the theater. That's a different reality. I mean, it was a total wrenching of me as an actor. I asked the priest from the Actors Chapel. He always used to talk about this actor. Did you ever know Penny? Did you ever know Penny? No, I never knew her. Well, he didn't need, he'd go on. He was chatty and cute, and he, much simpler than a rabbi. He'd bless you for nothing. You didn't even have to ask, just. And so I had him come over, and before I go on stage, I'd get down on my knees, and he'd say a blessing over me. And I was so full of superstition and so full of any help that I could get to get out there. And so that's what I did for the rest of that week, and then I was finished. But I was also finished as an actor. It had ripped something into me which gave me, I never had fear as an actor. Never, never, never. I could do anything. And the fear of forgetting my lines became too present. And I did 2 plays to test myself right after that. But I was not free. There was that niggling thing at the back of my mind. I never felt lost. I love being lost. I mean, that's the actor's haven. That's heaven. Heaven. It's the actor's to be lost to not know what you're going to do next. That your history is set up so strongly, and you've transferred so powerfully and deeply into this new part of yourself that you can lose yourself in it. And the fun of it is losing yourself. If you're watching yourself, you can't lose yourself. And I found, that little part of that I was saying, am I okay? Am I okay? And I wasn't losing myself. And so that was the end.
The idea that violation happened in your space of work, in your magic, happened in the magic. Just says a little something about me. I think of these things in a mystical way, in a way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but also like you talk about like breaking out in the shingles. and other things when you're uncomfortable and migraines and having these things. You have a power. There's like a power that you're tapping into that was violated, and to relate it to naming names, it jarred me because of how much you suffered. You wouldn't just say that in a flippant way. This was a big deal.
Big deal. It wrecked me. Now, interestingly, I did Shampoo after that, and I never had a problem. Maybe because we had so many readings of it. Warren had told me about it even while I was doing Prisoner, so that we had a lot of scripts to read and a lot of getting his cast together and reading through it. Jack Warden was an old friend from Union days, from the Blacklist days, from fighting against the Blacklist. And he was, as familiar to me as myself. I loved him so dearly. And so it was such a comfortable space for me to be in. And Warren was such a flirt. I mean, it was so delicious and so flirty. And there was such a kind of wet dream atmosphere on the whole set that, everybody was, hot and stimulated and it was a great set and a great feeling, and we all were so into each other that there wasn't room for that kind of coldness or standoffness or watching yourself. It never happened.
I want to talk about something that I think is important, and maybe if you didn't talk about it a lot in your book, I would not feel like I could talk to you about this.
Age. I got you. I got
You're
it.
good.
Look how careful he was. Look how careful Pussy.
Well, you're thinking, what am I sensitive about? But I think
yes,
this book may have changed my mind about something that I never thought could be changed, which is I've had a judgment about people that have had plastic surgery. Mm-hmm. And the way you keep describing it and the way you laid it out in here, especially after losing 12 years of your career, at the time when you did lose those 12 years, which were
working years.
The working years for a female.
Absolutely.
And
24 to 36.
Yeah.
I was blacklisted at 24, and I didn't get back to work until 36. All I did was panic about the studios finding out what my real age was. I mean, I hired press agents to make sure that the radio didn't have it on, that they didn't say my birthday. I mean, because I had to go back 10 years. I had to in order to go to work. In order to raise my daughter, Dinah, I had to work. And my fierceness, I can feel it now, my fierceness about, I'm going to make up for that time. You can't take that time away from me. I'm making up for it. Was so inbred in me that whatever I had to do to keep on working in film was what I was going to do. And that first time when I had my face done, I was like maybe 31. And as I said in the book, I hadn't worked in years. I looked bad. I looked like a woman with 3 children. Her husband was having an affair. And I was up in the country, sitting with 3 kids, a 2-year-old and teenagers. And the phone rang, and I was offered a part in a Broadway play. The part of a 26-year-old secretary, the only woman in the play. And I was told by my husband if I took that play, he was going to leave me. And there I was, just looking in the mirror. I was doing a portrait of myself at the time. I was looking in the mirror saying, who would ever believe that I was 26? I mean, I'm a wreck. Everything is down, not up. And so through my mother, actually, because she was afraid I'd go to somebody who would wreck my face. Through my mother, I found people who were really good doctors. And at 31, I had very, very good skin, as I still do. And so it was a tremendous success. I mean, I went, right into that part in the play, and it was successful. We went across the country back to New York, where, we opened to the worst reviews that anybody could get, because it was a terrible play. But, by the time you come in with a play, you love it, So, but it made an absolute difference in my life. I was faced with either have a job or not, either act or go to a sanitarium. I mean, I was in a place, Peter, I wasn't surviving. I wasn't surviving. I wasn't surviving the marriage. I wasn't surviving being, thrown in those mountains where I was living with the kids. I really was on the way out. I was sick. And so that facelift had meant more to me than just being able to do that part. It was a survival mechanism. It gave me the chance to relive 12 years that were fucking taken away from me. And if a facelift can do that, hats off.
The potted plant on the floor. I want you to tell that story if you could. Do you remember?
Well, yeah, I don't even remember who was in the play, but I was sitting up in the balcony and the actors were working, and they were in a very heightened state of, you did this, no, you did this, and you think I didn't really see that? You think I really didn't? And in the middle of this argument, a potted plant that was standing on a table there fell onto the stage. It was part of the stage. It was a potted plant that they had on stage, and somehow it fell in the middle of the stage. And the actors, thinking that they were being professional, ignored it. Thinking, it's like if somebody yelled something in an audience, hey, who do you think you are up there? They would ignore it. Well, they used the potted plant the same way. It had fallen, and so as professional actors, they were going to step over it and talk to each other and carry on the same argument. Except that we in the audience saw them not accept a new reality, which was the potted plant that fell on the stage, that somebody should have, bent down and said, would you help me with this, other actor? Would you come and help me? Would you get a piece of paper or something, and so we can have our argument while we clean up this plant that's in the middle of our stage and use it? U-S-E it? Use it? Use it! And ignoring it became a comedy. They could never recover from stepping over a potted plant.
I love that.
I love that you love it.
Lee Grant, thank you so much.
Peter Rinaldi, you're the best. You are.
Back to One is a production of Filmmaker Magazine, which is a publication of IFP, the Independent Filmmaker Project.